Hello and welcome to the Business of Meaning podcast. I'm your host, Eric Rosenberg. Over the years, I've had the privilege of helping businesses in the meetings and event industry grow and succeed. And I'm excited to share that experience with you. If you feel alone and overwhelmed, and if you're looking to take your business to the next level, improve your strategy and sales, and connect with like minded professionals, you are in the right place. I invite you to visit eventbusinessformula.com and join our community of event business owners dedicated to exponential growth. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meeting podcast. And today we're going to speak with somebody I consider a genius in what she does. She's a specialist in marketing, she's a specialist in helping people that are creative, helping entrepreneurs. She is in doing so many things in corporate America. And finally, the bulb went on and said, nope, no more corporate America, and go into the entrepreneurship. Fascinating journey. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have also somebody who's a great speaker. Her name is Kay Allison, and she said that she works with creative people and companies so they make a lot of money, and she's going to explain you why. Kay, thank you so much for taking the time today.
This is such a great start to our conversation, Eric.
You know, I heard about you thanks to a mentor, a coach that I'm working with who's phenomenal, Mark Levy, who I believe you know as well.
I am working with him as well.
There we go, Mark. When you're listening to that, another plug for you. And then he told me, she's amazing. You need to talk to her. And he was, of course, as usual, totally right. And for those who are listening, they're going to understand why it is. But if you can start by telling us, what is your journey?
Well, I actually started as a professional musician. Yeah, I played the cello professionally. I majored in it in college, believe it or not. And I realized very quickly that I wasn't good enough to have the kinds of experiences professionally that I wanted to have, nor was I going to make the kind of money that I wanted to make to live the kind of lifestyle I wanted to live. So I met with a career counselor when I was a junior in high school and walked in a bright red suit, and she said, well, what else do you like to do? And I said, well, I love literature and I love organizing things. And she looked me up and down and said, you need to go into advertising. So I went back and got my master's in marketing communications at Northwestern and got a job at a global ad agency right out of school.
JWT, right?
I started at Faucon Belding, and then I went to J. Walter Thompson, which is no longer, I hear, as of the first of this year, but it's a WPP company. I ended up running new business for both of those firms. And as new business director, I was sitting in my little office trying to come up with answers to these RFP questions from Bausch and Lomb and like these huge companies about what's your philosophy of advertising. So I talked them into sending me to two very different kinds of executive education so that my thinking was leading edge thinking. I went to a summer program, an executive education program at Harvard, corporate creativity. And I also got trained as an ontologically based executive coach. Now, as I understand it, ontology is a branch of philosophy that is concerned with how people create identity, develop relationships, and coordinate action through language.
Whoa.
And what is business besides creating identity, developing relationships, and coordinating sales-based activities? And so I took both those things and I mashed them up, as I am wont to do, and created a new process for pitching new business for the ad agencies that I worked with and increased the number of pitches they won by 30%.
Wow. Talking about something that works and you can measure, it's amazing.
It was amazing. And I was presenting this, clients started asking for my methodology to start coming up with new products. And so, as a new business person, I was like, well, I'll create the product and then we'll be the advertising agency for it. But they would pay me, pay the agency, not me, pay the
Right.
agency a lot of money to do that. But the agency wasn't giving me any of that money. And so I was able to negotiate with my former employer a contract where they put me on retainer and introduced me to all their clients. But I started my own kind of satellite that I fully owned. But, at the time, Eric, I was a single mom with two kids in a very expensive private school.
Wow.
And so I could not have made this move without that relationship financially. And it's what launched me into working with Nestle and Kraft and PepsiCo and Avon and all the big, like Fortune 200 companies. And I packaged my intuitive, creative process in the service of helping them develop new product ideas that were going to succeed.
Mhm.
And their minimum performance hurdles were 25 to $100 million in year one. So these
Wow.
were big ideas, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I did for 15 years. I built a company, generated 6 million a year in revenue. The work that we did for our companies, for our clients, produced $2 billion in new revenue. And so that was a wildly successful venture for a long time, for a nice long time. My husband and I also started a focus group at the same time because I would moderate focus groups to learn about consumer needs for these new product projects I was working on. And I noticed that my clients would go from like staying at the W hotel into these crappy little strip malls where you walk in and you're overwhelmed with the smell of stale Chinese food and it's chipped, battered Office Depot furniture. And you'd put housewives in an interview room that looked like a conference table from a boardroom. And they'd start talking about market share. I mean, like they would think that that's what you wanted them to talk about. I was like, there's an opportunity here. So
Mm.
we bought a heavy timber loft across from Oprah's studios in the West Loop of Chicago.
Good location.
And we hired this amazing architect, and we had these red walls that kind of tilted like Richard Serra sculptures. And we turned it into this focus group facility where it was cool but super friendly. And the interview rooms looked like, come on and hang out in my family room. Stylish but comfortable, right? And our staff was trained. We took them to the Four Seasons training and we had a chef. And anyway, it was quite the deal. So I mashed up like the W with market research and created this amazing facility. We ran it for 17 years until COVID, and it won the world's best facility award every single year from the time
Wow.
we started it. Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing. And, two things I want to say. I want to share a story of somebody I know, sorry, that you made me think of and what you say. And then the second thing, which is for me very inspiring, is you have this idea, you see the opportunity. If you don't go to the big firm to tell them, listen, I'd like to be on a retainer and like to develop that. If you don't go to take initiative and find people who somehow align with what you want to be doing, then nothing is happening. But when you do that, you take your life in your own hands, which is what any entrepreneur should be doing. And the story, you're going to appreciate that because you mentioned WPP.
Mhm.
And I have a friend from Belgium, Philippe Fass, who went to London. And he was in a room where Martin Sorrell, who was the head of WPP, was speaking. And there were 500 people in the room. And at the end, he asked, any questions? And Philip raised his hand. He said, yes, sir. He stood up and he said, I'm studying advertising. Would you take me for an internship? And he had 499 people looking at him thinking, shoot, I should have said that myself. And of course, he got hired and started his career with Saatchi and Saatchi. So what you did, and mentioning as well your personal life situation with two kids, private school, but believing in yourself and going for it, I think it's admirable. And I love that you
Oh,
share.
oh, thanks for saying that. I have learned that in any challenging situation, you only have two choices. One choice is short-term discomfort, which is having the uncomfortable conversation. And the other is long-term dysfunction. And I will always opt for the short, acute
Yeah.
pain than the long-term nagging dysfunction.
You have no idea how much it resonated with me because we left Belgium and came to America in 2013, and I wrote a book to my daughters for that. But I said in the book, and it's something that it is the same thing you said, but with different words. People in general will choose misery over uncertainty. And by taking your life in your hands and going for it and believing in yourself, that's how you make change. And you're not always succeeding, but you have this vision of doing that. So take us now to it's COVID. And you say you had this very successful venue with your husband being recognized every year. And then the whole world shut down.
Yeah, it totally shut down.
What's going in your mind?
Well, we had actually thrived during the 2008, 2009 downturn, and we had ridden it out. We were one of the few, we're a stylish mom and pop, but we were a mom and pop, and we just were done. We just were done. We'd done it for 17 years. We were done. So we closed it down. We had wound down the consulting business prior to that for personal reasons. We have our youngest daughter required more intense mothering due to a lot of physical illness than me being on the road 2 weeks a month just stopped working. So we wound it down. And I had started with a former client, believe it or not, I had started a snack company called Farm and Oven. They were little mini muffins that a pack provided your kids with a half cup of vegetables.
Wow.
So they were like pumpkin muffins and zucchini muffins. And anyway, and we had sold it. Mike and I sold it during the middle of COVID. And my husband sold a company at the same time as well. So we spent a good couple years hiking and skiing and kind of wondering what was going to be next. I've been sober for 25 years and felt very passionate about helping people, especially during COVID, with addiction problems because they were skyrocketing, and started a program helping executive women get sober. As I got into it, it just wasn't working. You know how sometimes you start a venture and it's like pushing a boulder up the hill? At some point, you have to decide, are the signs in the universe telling me just stick with it, or are they telling me cut bait and do something else? So I decided to cut bait and got convinced to get on TikTok. So I got on TikTok about...
By whom? Tell me by whom.
Well, I'm a professional speaker and I wanted to get on a TEDx stage, which I haven't done yet, and hired a coach. In addition to Mark, I work with another coach and he insisted that I get on TikTok. I was like, it's not going to work. Like, I work with Fortune 200 companies. My people are on LinkedIn. They're on LinkedIn. I was highly resistant. Finally, he said, okay, I want you to do 3 TikToks a day for a week, and then we'll talk again and let's see how it goes.
3 per day for a week.
3 a day for a week. I'm like, okay, I'll do 3 a day for a week. That seems manageable. And one of them took off and I got inundated with DMs, people asking me if I would mentor them, if I would coach them, if I would work with them, what kind of course did I have? It was incredible. I obviously touched a nerve. So I love TikTok.
I bet you do.
TikTok's the bomb, man. I love TikTok.
Why do you think, with all your experience in communication, in marketing, in understanding people, in language and everything, why do you think that that specific TikTok took off?
The lead into it says, I made $6 million from these 7 questions. So I think that it worked because for about 4 reasons. Number one is I am a white-haired, makeup-free woman, and I stand out in the TikTok crowd. I don't have the plumped lips and I don't have the long eyelashes, and I'm not 23. I'm not lip syncing and I'm not doing a shopping haul unpacking. Like I stand out because I'm so different.
And you didn't dance in front of the mirror.
I didn't. I know, it's so weird. The second thing is I instantly created credibility by saying I made $6 million. And then the 7 questions were things that people had not heard before. I told them something they hadn't heard before. That's why I think it worked.
And what are the 7 questions? And is it coming from the methodology you were using in the ad agency?
When I had my innovation company, I used these 7 questions in sales conversations with prospects, and I closed 85% of the pitches that I made. So Granger research shows that clients hire consultants when they feel comfortable, when they feel confident, but not in the consultant. When they feel confident in themselves, that they have articulated and thought through the problem and the project thoroughly and appropriately. And so these 7 questions not only told me what promises I need to make in my proposals, but they also created so much value for the client on the call because I was helping them think things through by asking questions they hadn't asked themselves.
Got it. So could you repeat? Because usually I understand quickly if you explain to me a long time and you say something that I know it's important about why would client hire consultant and about this.
They pick the consultant that makes them feel confident,
Okay.
but not confident in the consultant, confident in themselves.
Got it. So somebody external who's going to help them get more confidence in themselves. That's the differentiating factor at that moment.
Yes, and confident that they've thought the problem through thoroughly and that they framed the project appropriately.
So I wish I would have the button to push now drums roll before you get the series of 7 questions. Listening.
So the first question I always ask is, may I ask you some questions for context? There is a method behind all of this madness. The method here is when somebody says, yes, you can ask me some questions, they have on some level agreed to participate and to be open. So may I ask you some, and it's respectful, for gosh sakes, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, the second question is why now?
Okay.
Why now? Because business issues don't just appear suddenly.
Right.
They have been around and everybody's been aware of them, but something shifted so that it got to the top of the list right now. And the reason I want to know that is because I want to acknowledge it in my proposal. And it also makes them think about, gosh, what happened? Like, what happened? Why is this all of a sudden something that needs to be addressed where a month ago it didn't need to be addressed right now?
So they give you more context.
This is all context. This is all context. The third question is, what's the business problem you're trying to solve? So I did focus groups and consulting. And so, you know, if they called and said, hey, could you do 8 focus groups in 4 cities? I absolutely can. May I ask you some questions for context? Yes. Why now? What's the business issue you're trying to solve? Right? Typically, what people ask for is on the surface. Are you a scuba diver? Have you ever gone scuba diving?
That's funny you say that. Absolutely not. And this week, I met an amazing lady who has created an app for scuba divers.
I love that. Well, when you're on a dive boat, you're out in the middle of the ocean, and on the surface, it just looks like waves, kind of gray waves. But when you jump in and you pull yourself down the anchor line, oh my God, there's an amazing world down there. There's these crazy fish and these purple fans. And I mean, it's a Dr. Seussian world down there. And the same thing is true when a client comes to you and asks you to give them a proposal for a project. The way that they framed the project is the waves, the surface, the chop. There's a business issue down there. And so if you ask, what's the business issue? You're going to see the fish and the purple fans, and you can make an offer to take care of the problem with the purple fans rather than take care of the superficial chop on the top. So you can make a bigger offer to people.
Which means as well that most probably you'll differentiate from any other competitor who will not go as deep at the beginning.
Night and day. Plus, you can charge more money because it's higher value. The fourth question is, if this issue doesn't get resolved, what's the consequence? And the follow-ups are like for the company, for the brand, for your team, for your division, for you personally. Now, that might seem like a not so nice question, but the intent behind it is to wake them up that there are personal consequences at stake here, even if you're working in a huge corporation.
Absolutely.
The next question is, what does the ideal resolution look like? Paint the scenario. If this project exceeded your wildest dreams, what's the consequence? How are you going to measure success? And then you press, what does that mean financially for the company?
Awesome.
So I'm getting them to put money so we've already anchored the price. We've already anchored the price way up there. And then the last question, most people think you can't ask this, but you can. What are your criteria for selecting your outside partner? Like, what's your checklist? Certainly you have a checklist, and sometimes they don't.
Right.
And so then you can say, look, other clients have told me with these kinds of projects that these 5 or 6 qualities were really important to them. You can shape what that criteria is. Sometimes they have not thought this through. And even being asked the question, it's kind of like what Mark just did with me earlier this morning. And what's that going to look like? And how are you going to do that? Like, it helps you fill in the blanks. And it adds tremendous amount of value. So those 7 questions draw out the prospect's story and helps them think through their issues and the way they frame the project more thoroughly.
It's amazing. First of all, thank you for sharing that. And second of all, it opens so many opportunities, especially in terms of the pricing, as you were saying, because now you're going to charge based on the value that it's bringing. And they're already telling you that what they expect is going to have X impact on the company. So how do you translate that? And I'm sure that any business owner listening to you is like, okay.
Okay, so now what? Yeah. Well, it's a little bit like building IKEA furniture. So the answer to question number 5 goes with your promise and what you lead with in your proposal. So I believe question 5 is, what does success look like, right? And so that's what you promise to do. You promise to deliver that. And if you're like, ooh, that's too big of a promise, I would submit to you that you need to rethink your business proposition. that you're not thinking big enough, or you don't have strategic alliances with enough people that you can make that promise. Because you don't have to know how to solve that deep problem yourself, but you need to have a team of strategic alliances that you can bring the resources to bear to solve that pain point and deliver that big, big promise. So I lead with the promise, then talk about, remember the question about why now? In the background, I say, since X, Y, and Z happened, because I know what happened, this problem has become a priority, and I romance the breakdown, right? I romance the problem so that the relief that I offer looks even better, to be quite frank. And then in the process, so it goes, here's my promise. I'm going to deliver this big thing for you. Here's the background. I'm going to help you resolve this burning issue you have. And then I write, here's my process. And I lay it out as in a grid with 3 columns. Here's the output. Here's what the client gets at each step. Here are the actions, and here's how much time it's going to get. And then in pricing, even in the scope of the verbal conversation, when they've said, oh gosh, it'll bring in $25 million in revenue, I'll ask, well, what part of that, what percentage of that are you willing to invest? So I'm basing my fee not on what my competitors charge or what a good hourly rate is or what I used to make as my hourly salary plus 50% or whatever the formulas are. I'm basing it on the value I'm going to create.
Absolutely. Love it. Absolutely love it. So when we talk about pricing, I would say but let's not generalize, most of the entrepreneurs, especially when they start their business, they're kind of afraid of asking too much. They're kind of
I
afraid
know.
of saying it's that much. And there's also the imposter syndrome that kicks in more time than we would want to. So what is your advice? What do you see as mistakes that people do when they are telling
Mm.
about their price? And what is your advice for them?
I talk about a concept I call the Copernican shift. Copernicus was the astronomer back in the 14 and 1500s who said, no, it's not the sun that revolves around the earth, it's the earth that revolves around the sun. In the same way, when I'm only thinking about myself, when I'm thinking about pricing, of course I get insecure. Oh, I'm not worth it. And oh, I don't have as much experience as so. And I'm not under the brand name of my former corporate employer
I have 2 kids in
anymore.
private school and I need to pay the fees.
I've been there, right? But in the same way as Copernicus, instead of putting yourself in the center, put your client in the center and focus on how much value you are going to create for them.
As simple and efficient as it. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can see what you're doing as being unique. I don't know about many people that start like that and have this methodologies approach. What is your advice to differentiate in an industry where, let me rephrase that. I
Okay.
always said that people, I had an agency. I organized meetings, sales meetings, incentive in over 50 countries in the world for 20 years. Okay. I've been there. And I'm fascinated and frustrated by the number of people that come in and let's say you're my potential client is CEO, and I would say, hey, do you want a welcome cocktail? Do you want a farewell dinner? Any vegetarian in your group? I don't care. Of course, it's important at the end. But if I come to you and say, okay, if I understand well in your industry, these are the challenge that your industry is facing, and those 3 competitors, what would you expect to do with that? You're bringing your whole sales team together. What are the key messages? How are you going to measure the impact? That's how you differentiate. Now, going back to you have your business in an industry which is too many times considered as just being pure logistical, and where
Mm.
too many people are actually putting their own self in the box of logistical. How do you advise people to differentiate themselves so that they can really charge the fee, and what is the value that they're bringing?
Look, there are focus group moderators, hundreds,
Right.
hundreds. Why was I the go-to for craft foods? Because I made offers that other people didn't. I didn't tell them, sure, I can do your 8 focus groups in 2 markets for X price. If they needed me to do that, to plug a number into a spreadsheet for a budget, sure, just tell me that's what you want. But if you feel, I'm going to come in, use focus groups to solve your business problem. That's how I differentiated. I became the go-to all the people in their C-suite because they asked me to be part of their food technology council with all the heads of R&D from all over the world for Kraft, because I was their conduit to consumers. And I didn't just give them what consumers said, I told them how to solve their business issue based on what consumers said. There's a huge difference there. I didn't make them do the heavy lifting work. I did the heavy lifting work for them and became such a valuable resource for that organization. And then as those people left and went to Avon and Hewlett Packard and Campbell's and Nestle, they brought
Yep.
me with them. Home Depot, they brought me with them.
And we're back at providing value, and we're back at putting yourself in the shoes of your customer and not just showing it. They don't care about the price of advertising price you've received. They care about what's going to impact their business.
Absolutely.
Kay, I have a question. You're so knowledgeable. You have so much experience. Why working with a coach?
Well, number one, you can't read the label from inside the jar. You always need other people. And one of the keys to my success has been learning stuff that interests me and integrating it into whatever it is I'm doing for work. Like my ontological coaching, I was just interested in that. And it turned out to be foundational to my career success. I've studied biology, I've studied economics, I read 3 books a week. Like, I grew up in a family where my parents were teachers and they were always learning stuff. I mean, my mom is 94 years old and she's taking classes on identifying the prairie grasses in Colorado.
I love it.
That's just essential. It's like oxygen to my brain.
Awesome. I just love that, what you say in the story here. I would love to listen to you for hours, but that's the podcast and the format of what it is. So I have 2 last questions for today. The
Okay.
first one, how do people get in touch with you?
Find me on TikTok. It's at K_company_creativity. K company creativity.
And it's
Or email
K-A-Y.
K-A-Y. Yeah, or email me. It's my first name at firstnamelastname.com. K@kayallison.com.
K@kayallison.com. Wonderful. And my last question, you never know who's listening. I had a friend who was launching a private jet company, and somebody was listening. Next thing you know, they were negotiating 17 FBOs, I think. So you never know.
Wow.
What is a dream that you have, private, professional, that if anyone's listening and if they know somebody or they know something, they should help you and they should reach out to you to help you on this dream?
I love public speaking. And if there's any opportunity to be on a stage, please reach out.
Wonderful. Kay Allison, thank you so much for spending the time with me today. Thank you for sharing those great insights, which I know is going to help a lot of people. And I look forward to meeting you in person.
Me too.
In the future.
Me too. Thanks so much.
The
Okay.
first one, how do people get in touch with you?
Find me on TikTok. It's at K_company_creativity. K company creativity. Or email K-A-Y. K-A-Y. Yeah, or email me. It's my first name at firstnamelastname.com. K@kayallison.com.
K@kayallison.com. Wonderful. And my last question, you never know who's listening. I had a friend who was launching a private jet company, and somebody was listening. Next thing you know, they were negotiating 17 FBOs, I think. So
Oh
you
my
never know.
gosh. Wow.
What is a dream that you have, private, professional, that if anyone's listening and if they know somebody or they know something, they should help you and they should reach out to you to help you on this dream?
I love public speaking. And if there's any opportunity to be on a stage, please reach out.
Wonderful. Kay Allison, thank you so much for spending the time with me today. Thank you for sharing those great insight, which I know is going to help a lot of people. And I look forward to meeting you in person
Me too.
in the future.
Me too. Thanks so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Business of Meeting podcast. I hope you found today's episode valuable. If you enjoyed the show, the most important thing you can do is leave a review and share it with your colleagues. It really helps spread the word. I truly appreciate your support. And if you're ready to take your business to the next level, don't forget to visit eventbusinessformula.com to learn more about how we are helping even business owners like you. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.